the insights to our auto contouring procurement and the clinical use. I have to say I'm presenting the work of my colleagues, Johan, Turid, and Camilla, that did most. Myself, I was involved in the procurement. I will talk a bit about this in the first half and then a bit more about the rest. About myself, I'm a physicist working almost 20 years in medical physics, originally from Switzerland, moved to Norway 10 years ago and have worked here ever since. A bit about Norway. Norway has a population of about 5.5 million, and we live in Bergen. It's at the west coast, where about 400,000 persons live. Norway is dealt in 4 health regions, north, mid, east, and west. And we are serving the west, which serve 1.1 million inhabitants. And there are 2 radiation oncology centers, one in Bergen and the other one in Stavanger, a bit more south. And the fun fact, Bergen is the most rainiest city in Europe, depending on which source you're reading, but it's very high up. So then you know this. Disclosure, we have bought art plan from Terra Panacea, and Human Bytes asked me to present this, but on a voluntary base. Anything. So a bit about the clinic itself. We are an area variant clinic, but we bought RayStation for proton therapy. It's not implemented yet, but it's coming soon. We have 4 TrueBeam, 1 Ethos, and a Halcyon with Hypersight. We also have brachytherapy and a gamma knife, and a ProBeam 360 is under installation. For the staff, we have more than 80 physicians working towards radiotherapy, about 60 RTTs, and then it's 22 physicists and 13 dosimetrists for the radiation therapy. Patients, about 2,200 yearly. And now to this talk, we decided that we would like to have an automated contouring using artificial intelligence. And in the first run for prostate patients, because it's a large group. Then for breast patient, it's also a large group, and we have often delays in the care path. They're coming late in the loop. And we still have a bit of hope that we could do some kind of planning without the physician, that we can start the planning and using AI, and the doctor then will at the end approve all at the same time. And of course, head and neck, this is a patient group where we don't have that many, but there is a potential huge time saving per patient. So now to this talk. The first part will be about the procurement. What have we learned? The second part is a bit about how we introduced it to. Sorry, this should run here now. What we have learned from the introduction and what is difficult, and at the end, I'd like to present some preliminary results from a study that we are performing. Okay, in a nutshell, we were asking for a contract for 3 years. We did not want to get a lifetime product. It's so fast changing on this field. We thought about 500 patients yearly. And one thing beside that you need to know, we asked for no cloud solution due to the Norwegian regulations. It was difficult, and we didn't want to have used the time to convince the government to allow this. So we asked for a local installed software. The hospital rules, even though it's for 3 years, we have to calculate the cost for 10 years. And if it's above 200,000 euros, then it has to be published on the European market, what we did. So what did we want? An advanced algorithm. And for this, of course, we had to write the procurement. Again, from the hospital, we had to weight the cost at least 50%. And then there's some supplier services like delivery times, 5%. But this leaves us with only 45% for the product quality. And this can be an issue if you have similar values to work with. Especially the price can be a problem, because if you don't choose your criteria wisely, you will get something like this at the end. A very cheap, but not very good working product. So I hop right on the criteria. We had 5 CT scans for each region, head and neck, breast, and prostate. We had peer-reviewed the ground truth, what we called our own ground truth, and sent only the CT to everyone that applied. There were six vendors, competitors. There is a bit of an issue of anonymization for the head and neck because you don't really get them anonymized. We solved this with a data agreement. And at the end, we got the data back and we wanted to evaluate. The first was a dice score and Hausdorff distance. Why these two? We started in 2022. There were not so many publications yet. I come back to this later or soon. So we went for those. That time, the most common. The next step would be then individual evaluation, a double blind. So no one really knows. You see it on the right side. We had anonymized every structure, including the ground truth in Eclipse, and the medical doctors and the dosimetrists then had to evaluate on this scale from 0 to 3. 0 means the structure is not usable, and 3 is there's no changes needed. And at the end, we also wanted to evaluate the impact on the dose distribution. As I said, at the time when we started to evaluate, there were quite a lot of publications coming out. Unfortunately, we did not see them, or they came too late. We could have saved some time knowing like a bit which measure that would be more representative and so on. So if you're going out to do something like this, read up what is out there on publications. So now let's go to the results. For the first, the quantitative measures. The advantage, as we see it, is they're very fast and they're very objective. The disadvantage, how do you judge a good result? What is a good result for a dice score? What is a good result for a Hausdorff distance and all the measures? And where do you have the cutoff? If you want to exclaim one of the competitors, how bad do they have to be that you can say now we don't take them further? So if you look at 3 patients from each side, on the left prostate, in the middle breast, and then head and neck, you see the mean dice score in the red circle or red ellipse. They all score around 0.9. The patient number 1 got a 0.9 and the lowest is 0.87. So they're very close, all these values. And we did not feel it's too much distinguish quality between the values. So we could not exclude any of the competitors with just these values. Seemed they were so close, and yeah. So then we went over to the individual evaluation, and this is the advantage of those, that they're clinically relevant. You have the experts judging the quality and not a machine or a number. The disadvantage is the time-consuming process, and they are also prone to subjective preferences. Just to give you a number, we had 244 structures per head and neck patient to evaluate. So if a doctor is using 30 seconds per structure, it will leave him with 2 hours for one patient without any break. So then up to 5 patients, it would be 10 hours judging a structure every 30 seconds. So it's a really lot to do. So this is an issue. It's also why we did not go for even more patients than 5, even though, of course, the statistics would be much better with higher number of patients. So, but then, again, to show you what they did, on the left, that's what it looks in Eclipse. And on the right side, this is the evaluation scheme. They did not see it. What they did see was the structure code and a random name. And then to be sure that they know what they should be seeing, they also got the list of what it is. It's an optic nerve. And then we had physicians and dosimetrists evaluating the structures. And you see already here, the doctors were number 4 and 5, for instance, here, and they did not have the time to evaluate all of those. We also encountered other problems. Now this is, they also had to judge our own peer-reviewed structures, and I think this was a nice result for the spinal cord, where both our dose planners scored it at the perfect structure, but the medical doctors scored it as a 1 or a 0, not usable. This shows a bit how difficult it is to evaluate these products. In this case, you have to dig in, find out what is it. You have to talk to the doctor. So there's just not enough time to do all of this. So keep that in mind. It is biased, unfortunately. So then let's go how to weight these results. You see on each column you have the leverandør is a Norwegian word for the competitors. So we have number 1 to 6, and Hus is Haukeland, is our hospital. The first result that was very nice and good for us to see. You see that we had the highest score for the structures with a 2.4. So it worked. We were happy with our structures, even though we would expect to have a 3.0 since it was peer-reviewed by many workers at the hospital. But look now at the results. Here you would see a clear, not a clear, but a winner with an average score of 2. So should we just pick this one? Yes and no. Look also at how many organs that were contoured, right? They have in total only 727 for all the patients. And other competitors, they have almost the double, 13 or 1400 patients. Of course, you don't need all of the structures, but somehow you should also give them a chance that they have more structures, even though you might not use it today, you perhaps want to use it another day. Another problem is, how do we weight now? Now it's just the score of all the organs that were contoured and with an average, but the organs, they don't really count the same, do they? Let's look at example. We have let's see, we got 3 competitors delineating 2 organs. One is the brachialis, the plexus, and the other one is the eye. And we would get characters as in these blue boxes. The first one would get a 1 for the plexus, so it's quite poor result, but a perfect eye. The one in the middle would be a 2 for both, and the last one would be inverted from the first. A very good plexus, but a bad eye. In average, pure number, everyone has a number of 2, right? But in the clinic, it's not the same. To contour, to delineate an eyeball, it takes maximum 1 or 2 minutes. But a plexus, it will take much more time. So to do a mathematical average of all the organs is not what you really want to have in your clinic. You wouldn't have a weighted score. So we went a bit further for the dose impact on the dose distribution, and this is also problematic. The advantage is, of course, it's dose what counts. The disadvantage, it's a lot of work when you don't want to, if you want to do it thoroughly. Keep in mind, you can always just report the dose on the new structure set, but this is not what will happen in your clinic. If you then start using another set that has a bit of bias from the AI, you will also optimize differently, right? You will get another dose distribution. And in order to really compare this, it will take first a lot of time. You have to optimize each plan, each structure set on the, again, and then would you just run it through without any optimizing, or would you give the dose planner chance to do the optimization for each structure set, but then how much comparable are they to each other? So this is also a problem in this procurement that we thought we would do, or that we did. So what we propose one should do for the next time one goes on procurement. At the end, the time saved in your clinic is all that counts. What we did retrospectively is we estimated the time that the dose planner or the physicians need to delineate, and then we just used a linear scale from 0% additional time if they have the maximum character for the organ, and 100% additional time if you have a 0, and then linear in between. You could discuss which scale is the correct one, but this is the easiest. So in that case, it's easier to use this characterization. You can also do it mathematically then. So this is what we ended up analyzing for our using for all the competitors, and you can see that the time saved totally, the last column, is between 40 and 57%. It's a bit more divided in the first column, prostate, breast, and head. You see that they're not all the same. And this is another thing I would like to point out. Some competitors are very good in one region. Like, look at number 1. They are the best in prostate, but they don't deliver the same quality for breast, and they're the poorest, not the poorest, the almost poorest, and the head structure. So this is also something that is very important to see. If you put them all under one average number, you might lose this. So keep in mind that you would perhaps want to judge per region, and if you're a smaller hospital that is not treating head, you would end up in another product than if you have a large, and so on. The good thing, and I'm almost done with the first part, there was this publication from Paul Doolan that did quite the same. And if you compare their numbers that they have published for die score and time saving, we get very similar results as them. So this was quite good for us to see that we did this. Yeah, we get good results or comparable results with other institutions. So we were not far off with what we did. So if this being said, I would go further to the next part, how to introduce AI safely into the clinical routine. I have safely in brackets because this comes from Ulrich and Human Bytes that said I would say how to introduce it safely. I'm not sure if it's safe or not, but I can just say what we did, and then you have to judge yourself whether it's safely or not. We started for the introduction with only one anatomical region. We started with head and neck before we released AI on the other products, on the other regions. After that, we always kept the original AI structure set untouched in Eclipse. So we duplicated it, and then the medical doctors and the dosimetrists did modify then the clinical set, which is based on the AI. With this, we always have the original structure from AI, and we can do some mathematical evaluation, such as dice and so on, to see which organs that we do change much and which we don't have to change. After that, we compared the clinically used and dice, as I said. I generated structure. We had a dice, a Hausdorff distance 95, and the mean square distance. And we did also look at the dosimetrical impact between the used structure and what would it be when only having used art plan. So, and this is what it looks like. We had 20 patients about, roughly. You see on top is the brainstem. If it's maybe difficult to read, you get the dice, Hausdorff distance and mean square distance, and then you have the calculated dose. So what we did, we characterized all the structures in these 4 categories, and A is a fully clinical usable. B is minor differences, but they have little impact on those. C is a corrections are needed, but it's still time saving. And the D structure we characterized as a redraw. So as you look now for this case, we have lots of Bs. We have some A, spinal cord, subangularis. We do not agree with larynx. But as I learned at Estro, Therapanacea now have updated their models, and they now also do they have the same guidelines than we are using now. So this should be better soon. So, but if this classification is used for the dosimetrists in order to be that they can rely on which organs do they really have to look at and which are not that critical. Of course, you always have to check all of them, but we would like to have not every structure is checked every time again, even though we know it's pretty good. So this is what we did in the beginning. Now at Estro, I also learned from Aarhus, Ditteslot Möller. She had a presentation, which I think was very nice. They wrote a procedure not only on the classification, but also if you have to characterize, change or redraw the organ, they wrote where is it most likely to be erroneous. I think this is very nice. We are working on this now as well, that we instead of just saying redraw cochlea, in this case, we would say redraw cochlea because it's too large or something like this, or be aware in this region and so on. So this was a very nice input from Denmark. Part 2, to be a bit how to manage the change and the differences in structures. As I said, the quantitative numbers alone will not convince anyone. It's difficult if you just go out with this dice score and then assume it will be, everyone will be happy and say, okay, you have a good dice score, so I trust the system. So let's look at the cochlea. Art plan is more generous than we delineate the cochlea. If you can see, the red line is the structure from Therapanacea, from Art Plan, and the blue line is what we are drawing in-house. So this is a structure we have to look at. Now let's look at the dice score. It's below 0.6. This is considered to be not a good dice score. Of course, dice is very sensitive for small organs, and you see it is including our structure. It's just a bit too large. So then we did a dosimetric analysis, and then this is what is important to be said in your clinic. It is not always clinically relevant, even though the structure might be a bit larger than it is that what you're used to. So let's look at the numbers here. The red circle, it is the recalculate the impact on those for the art plan structure versus for ours, and it's below 3% in difference. Of course, if it was extremely close to the tumor, to a higher dose region, then you probably could get some higher numbers, but still we are not that afraid. If it's so close, you would see it, and perhaps your cochlea would be lost anyway due to too much dose. So what do we think one should do now to convince everyone in the clinic? Each structure needs to be evaluated visually and dosimetrically. And as I said, then discuss these deviations and their impact on the dose with all the team, give them time, address the problems, and give a fair chance. Don't just stop seeing, oh, this is too large, I don't accept it, it's done. Give it a chance. I'd like to talk a bit more about this in part 3 of this presentation. And however, it takes time for everyone to get used to AI. But in the meantime, be patient and be open for criticism. let them say what they fear of, get and try to get a communication with Therapanacea, as for instance, larynx. Probably it's not only us telling them that we would like to have another structure, but they did adapt it, and we are very happy for this. So things can change as well. Next topic suggested by Human Bytes was, is art planning now changing our delineation tradition? So let's go back to the first 20 patients we evaluated. You can see the clinical relevant organs in this list, and then the characters from A to D. And in the left column, you see the SNIT is Norwegian for average, what we used for classification. After this evaluation and introduction to the clinic, we continued. Everyone got the presentation and could ask what they were fearing of. We're still monitoring the first patients, and you can already see we have a transition. For instance, for cochlea that was characterized as a B structure is already between A and B. So we have already, people are already adapting a bit or accepting that the structure is not exactly the same as they draw it, but still they think it's clinical okay. They're not so worried anymore. Here a bit of an overview of the changes. The lower score is better, and you see the blue one is the score for the first 20 patients, and the orange one is the score for the next 20 patients after introduction of art plan. And you can see many structures. All structures are getting better, some of them quite a lot. Let's look at the parotis. It was not that good, but now it has a very high score or very low score, which is good in that case. So will it also decrease variability? And let's look at what we have before art plan. You see a breast CTV. Yellow is what art plan is contouring, and the orange is historically our structures. Our medical doctors, they cut the CTV. It's not that, for the dose distribution, it has not that much of an impact since we're still using hybrid MRT, so it's mostly tangential fields. The dose is still there, but you can see there is, of course, a difference. So this was before we introduced our plan. Now, 3 months after our plan, you can see that the doctors already start to adapt towards art plan and not the other way around, of course. I think this is a very nice plot. You see it is changed on one side, but not on the other. So will it decrease variability? Probably yes. There will still be a medical doctor at the end doing it, but we probably get. And the good thing is, what we think is, it's not only within our clinic. The more that are using the same system worldwide or within Europe, the more we will get to a more consensus delineation of organs, which will make it easier to compare those distributions and results between clinics. So this is about what we learned from the introduction. I'm running out of time. Well, just shortly about this study we are performing right now. As I said, you have to compare your RE with your ground truth. And here on the picture on the right side, you can see 2 structures as you would have it. One is your ground truth and one is art plan. And you have now to judge, is it good or not? With this, you'll get you can calculate a DICE score and so on. But how do you want to judge whether it's a good DICE score or not? And what we were investigating now is how to find out what is the normal variation within a clinic. So we had all the dosimetrists, they delineated 20 head and neck patients from scratch without any input. And all of them were then compared to art plan. So the result is like this. you can see a lot of lines. One of them is the red one is art plan, and the black one is then ground truth, which we found together in the peer-reviewed process. So this gives us the chance to see the clinical variation of a DICE score and the Hausdorff distance, for instance, and now we can implement all the other values that have been published. We will work on this as well. And the visual inspection of this will also give you a feeling of what you can expect from AI, right? What is a usual normal variation and what is out of limits. So look at this here, it's a bit larger. You have in red art plan, in black the ground truth. You see clearly that let's look at the right parotis. Art plan is not exactly covering our ground truth, but if you look into the variation that our in-house dose planners are using, it is very well within this variation. So I think that we should really give a fair chance and saying this, we have to expect some deviations. Don't be too critical just because it's a machine. Of course, know what you're doing, but you also have to know there is always variation in your delineation. So here's a short movie about how it looks like now, all these structures going through. See how some of them are very good overlapping, some have a bit of a difference. But the art plan is very often quite good on in agreement with the natural variation within our clinic. I think this, as a physicist, I think this is a very nice, interesting plot. Now we also get a bit of a DICE score. What is a natural variation? So we can see for brainstem, for instance, we have a DICE score for all these dose planners between roughly 0.82 up to 0.91. So this is probably the variation. If you get in your evaluation of an AI algorithm, you get up to 85% in a brainstem DICE score. This is probably good enough. You cannot expect much more. You will not get more if you have all your doctors doing the same. You see some others like the cochlea. It is falling out, but we knew that it's a bit larger. We also have it for the others. It's the Hausdorff distance 95 and the mean surface distance. Be aware, this is patient number 1. We still do now work on evaluating all the 20 patients and give an average of all those, but this is quite some work. And now I'm coming to my next second slide, my last slide. And this is a bit of a awakener. Not only AI can sometimes be tricked by a tumor. If you look at the orange structures, you can see there is a tumor, and 2 of our dosimetrists delineated this as an organ instead of the real place where eye is. So when we saw this, we thought, oh, this is really a wake-up call. Be aware, it's not only the eye that sometimes do mistake. It's also us humans, and I think this is where we should keep in mind. So with this, I would like to thank you for your attention. Special credit to my co-workers who actually did all this work, Johan, Turid, and Camilla, and of course all the dosimetrists and physicians drawing and categorizing structures for hours and hours and hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Lukas, and let's open for questions in the chat. If anyone in the audience would like to pose a question for Lukas. While we're waiting, then thanks for a really good presentation and a solid study here at the end, and also pleased to see these learnings. You know that first it takes some change management. You see a development from B and C's up to A, B in terms of the accuracy and the performance, and also that we have a partner here in Terra Panacea who are responsive to feedback and will make correction, as you've seen over the last 6 months. And also this about balanced procurement, because if you are forced to take minimum 50% on price, you can end up with something that is really cheap. The process you've been through here is, I think, it's an eye opener for this. So we have one around the variability you see here. What if you add in-house variation as a tolerance distance in the geometrical metric, as this is the tolerance you would also accept in clinical practice? Do you get the question here, Lukas?
Not quite sure, but isn't it this what I tried to say, that is it regarding to the study that we are performing right now?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is exactly what we would like to show, that we have this variation. What we'd like to show is exactly this, what to expect. Everyone knows about dice, everyone can calculate the dice, but how to judge a dice, this is very difficult. And we hope to can provide a base on how much this variation is. When do you know it's good enough, or when do you know it's really not good enough? When is it outside of expected tolerance?
Yeah.
Not sure if this was the answer.
Otherwise, please, Tim, ask more here. But maybe a question for me then. Therapy, they also have the adapt box that will allow adaptive planning along the way. Do you see that this is good enough for updating an ordinary true beam versus buying a more expensive ethos, or how do you see the adapt box?
We have not used the adapt box.
Okay.
To be honest, no. We are only using to generate the structure sets, and yeah, this is, so I don't know. I cannot say.
Okay.
Now I'm a bit biased. We have an ethos, but of course, now I don't know. I cannot.
No, okay, that's fair. In terms of patients, have you seen any change, in patients' time to treatment or feedback or accuracy performance? Any early insights here?
No, we don't have any early insights yet. We also monitoring in this study a bit the time usage. I would have to ask where the most, well, we almost always manage to have the patient treated on the right day and the right time slot. But it's always a lot of stress for the dose planners, for the dosimetrists to doing it. So I think, but I have to ask them how much less time waiting they experience. So
yeah,
but I don't know. We don't have this number yet.
All right, then we have Eva asking if she understand it correctly, was the CTV breast enlarged due to the introduction of AI? And secondly, did you experience any resistance from the medical doctors during implantation? And so what was their main concerns?
Yes, well, as I said in this, yes, the patient I choose with enlarged is a recent patient, and there it happened. But our medical doctors, they used to, maybe enlarge is the wrong word. We use a shorter version of what we should do, but knowing that it's a bit cut off. So we are going a bit more back to the ESTRO guidelines. So yes, it is getting bigger again. So this is for the enlargements, and then
it was the resistance from medical doctors. What you experienced and what were their main concerns?
It's very difficult. It's not in general saying which medical doctors. One of them, some are very open and they accept the changes. Some are very skeptical, but I think, no, this I would not like. What happened for us was good. Johan Turi, they made this presentation showing these kind of variations, where you also could show retrospectively that we had clinical structures that were not in the good place, but the art plan was in the good place. This was also an eye opener for them, saying, okay, I see we are not perfect, we neither. So I think they're really looking forward to the time saving. So at the end, they embraced the system, but many of them are skeptical, and that's why we just give them time. And at the end, it's always them deciding which structure is the right one. So no one is changing anything without. It's the doctors approving the structure set at the end.
Right. And then Femke just followed up with the surface DSC metric. Here you could add a tolerance limit for when you accept the auto contour as overlapping with the ground truth, and this tolerance could be linked to the in-house variability per organ. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good point. I have to think about it, how we would implement this. The thing is, and this is always the problem, if the aim is to go only for art plan, and then we don't have any ground truth, right? Then you have only one structure. What would you evaluate then it against? Do you have only this structure? And as soon as you have to redraw it, then you redraw the structure. So not quite sure if I understand it correctly, but I'll talk with the others and see.
Yeah. And then Christopher is asking whether you use the AI tool for segment all regions or only for regions you showed in the presentation, eye, breast, and prostate, and head and neck, and what is the future plan?
Right now, we using, as far as I know, we use it for these patients, breast, prostate, and head and neck, and not for the others. It is also a bit, the reason for this is we did not buy unlimited on a number of patients, so we have to be a bit careful of which one we are sending to the system. That's why we're keeping us to those 3 regions. But the plan is, of course, over time to expand it to more and a large and to all if. But it's also a bit a monetary question. How much money do we have?
Right. I don't know if there are any other questions. Otherwise, my colleague Frederick also posted the link to the previous webinar with Nikos, who explained a little bit about the future pipeline, because a lot of new features and benefits are to come here within the next year or 2. So that's also worth a review for those who have an interest within this area. It seems like not any other questions here, Lukas. So I think it's also the 45 minutes here past. So thank you again for presenting this, and really good insights. And I hope people on the call were inspired or get a new perspective on how to procure and implement and harvest the benefit from an AI tool, and also the pitfalls you need to look out for.
Absolutely. And reach out if we are happy to share our experience if anyone.
Great. Thanks. And we have recorded the session. We will upload it. You can also request a link if you have colleagues who likes to see it. Otherwise, again, thank you for joining, and have a very good day. Thank you.
Thank you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.